Bienvenue à Ogilvy Renault en vidéo, une série informative qui vous renseignera sur les aspects légaux des affaires au Canada et dans le monde. Aujourd'hui, Normand Steinberg, coprésident du cabinet, et Charles Keizer, coresponsable de notre équipe Énergie, parlent du capital d'investissement dans le secteur énergétique.
Let's start with a description of private equity. Private equity is essentially capital raising from institutions, mostly the institutions usually being pension funds or insurance companies, some investment from retail as well. And the concept is generally that some funds are committed initially, other funds are on a standby basis for periods of 5 to 7 years. And these funds are invested in companies. A notable example would be KKR buying RJR about 20 years ago for $25 billion. Since then, PE funds, leading funds, for example, like Cerberus, like Blackstone, like KKR, in Canada, the Caisse de Dépôt, OMERS, Teachers, these firms invest in situations around the world. They have now morphed into investing not only in companies like BCE last year, for example, something that's going to close this December, but also in infrastructure. Infrastructure is a very interesting target for PE investment because it enables long-term investments in very stable types of investments. These investments have also included alternative energy targets such as solar-powered systems, windmills, etc. And these again provide opportunities for private equity to get in at the ground floor in new technology and also develop very large projects that we're going to talk about during this interview. Private equity is basically increasing its investment in energy for a few reasons. One is that the traditional investments that private equity used to make, like for example the BCEs of this world, are very difficult right now because of the unavailability of leveraged debt. So private equity looks to the energy sector as a stable and long-term investment. Also, of course, there's a global need for more energy investment. In the developing world, we're seeing growths of 10-11% of the gross national product of China, of India. They need to have concurrent investment in the energy sector to allow that growth to continue. In the developed countries, I should say, like Canada and the U.S., we've seen 20 years of underinvestment in the energy sector. So there's a lot of potential everywhere in the world for more energy investment. And last year in Canada, we saw 25% of investment of private equity in the energy sector, and we're sure to see that increase in the years to come.
The opportunities in the alternative energy sector continue to grow, particularly in the areas of wind development, biomass, as well as solar. Probably solar is starting to develop more as its technology begins to become more economic. Wind has taken the main focus because of either government incentives or legislation. And we've seen it develop strongly in the U.S. through the Northeast as a result of renewable energy markets, and in Canada through most provinces because of either government-backed contracts or utility-backed contracts, which have made projects much more financeable and usually over longer periods of time of up to 20 years. For example, Hydro-Quebec has entered into an RFP process worth probably about $5.5 billion, in which 15 bids were awarded. Ontario has aggressive targets and has already announced in August of 2007 2,000 megawatts of new renewable power, which it seeks, and in August of 2008 issued an RFP for 500 megawatts of that 2,000. It has a goal of about 15,700 megawatts out to about 2025. This will also bring about significant development in the north and will engage a number of First Nations, I believe, in those areas. The other aspect that's driving alternative energy is obviously the green movement and CO2 reductions. And we've seen that through either legislation that has been introduced or legislation contemplated being introduced in which parties are trying to get a first movement on taking advantage of that green initiative. This has also promoted new technologies and as a result fostered a clean tech movement, which we at Ogilvy Renault have tried to embrace through our clean tech practice. Infrastructure is one of Canada's key public policy initiatives. Canada's infrastructure has aged, and there's been little investment over the last number of years. And we're seeing probably an infrastructure deficit in Canada estimated in the range of $200 billion. Not all of this is going to be able to be publicly funded through tax revenues or other elements of public funding. So you're going to see more public-private partnerships arising through these opportunities. And I think with that, obviously, you'll see private equity investment. Infrastructure development will be fundamentally important for Canada in terms of its own competitiveness, and particularly in terms of each province's economic development. On energy, we're seeing that infrastructure requirements on the transmission systems with respect to electrical transmission systems, where significant projects can't move forward unless we actually see transmission development. And that will also extend into hundreds of millions of dollars of investment.
Our expectation is that we're going to see continued tremendous investment, probably exponentially increase in the energy sector, and a lot of it will be PE driven. That 25% number I mentioned originally will probably keep on going up. There may be a little bit of a down cycle in investment as a result of a consumer-led recession. If there's less energy consumption, of course, the ability to invest in that sector may be diminished. But that's just a temporary trend. We consider that for the medium and long term, investment will continue to rise.
And I think as well, if there is a recession, you may see the government pull back on some green legislation because it may require tax commitments on consumers. However, I think the movement forward on the green side will continue, and there will be continued development of wind power and other aspects of energy diversity. I think as well that Canada's energy-intensive economy has to continue to grow merely because energy is a global phenomenon, and we are a player in that phenomenon.